Hello, and welcome to the Joy of Drafting. Whether you started playing Draft 20 years ago or yesterday, when you ask someone for advice on how to get better at Limited, they often say draft B.R.A.V.E. B.R.A.V.E. was an acronym for pick orders. Whoever gave you that advice was trying to help, but Limited has changed somewhat in the last 20 years, and B.R.A.V.E. is dead. I can make a compelling argument that it didn't even work 20 years ago, but for now, let's take a look at what B.R.A.V.E. taught and then learn to be brave. B.R.A.V.E. stood for bombs, removal, evasion, aggro, attack, duds, defend? No one could really agree on the last two, so they were really telling you to draft B.R.A.V.E., suggesting that you should pick a bomb when you see one, then select removal if there's no bomb in a pack, and lastly take things with flying or that are hard to block. This isn't a bad place to start, but I've got a better one. Let's be brave. We're going to draft bombs, removal, additional value, and efficiency. To get started, let's define what a bomb is. I'll be using examples of cards from the past in this series, but the principles you learn by looking at these older cards should help you identify similar cards in the set you're drafting. A bomb is a card that will win the game on its own if your opponent can't immediately answer it. Bomb cards are often creatures, but can sometimes be other card types. Let's take a look at a few examples of bombs, and also some cards that are good, but not bombs. Most people who talk about bombs use the example of Baneslayer Angel. 3 white for a 5/5 flying lifelinking first striker with some other text. If you cast a Baneslayer on most boards, and your opponent doesn't kill it, you're likely to win that game. It's hard to block, hard to race, and has enough toughness to survive many removal spells. It's good in all of the quadrants of quadrant theory, which we learned about in episode 2. You should first pick Baneslayer Angel out of most packs you see it in. Grave Titan. 4 black for a 6/6 death touch that comes with 2 friends and makes more. Grave Titan is also a bomb. It's 10 power and toughness for 6 mana, and if you get to attack with it, you've usually got too many zombies for your opponents to deal with. It's good at blocking, hard to block, and good whenever you cast it. Sublime Epiphany. 4 blue for an instant with a lot of choices. Counter a spell, bounce a creature, draw a card, copy your best creature. This is an incredibly powerful magic card, and one that I first pick out of most of the packs I see it in. It's also not a bomb. I've lost after casting it and beaten opponents who resolved it. It's so high on the additional value metric that it's often the card you should pick when you see it, but understand that bombs win the game on their own unless dealt with. This card does not. To identify a bomb, as we're defining it for Brave drafting, look out for cards that your opponent must answer or they'll start to win the game for you. Pick these cards first. Removal. After scanning a pack for bombs, the next thing we're looking for is removal, but not all removal is created equal. What we're really looking for here is unconditional removal. By that, I mean a removal spell that can kill anything. Instant speed is better than sorcery, but we'll take what we can get. Let's compare a few removal spells and see how they stack up. Blood Curdle. 3 black, instant, destroy target creature, put a menace counter on a creature you control. This is what we're looking for. Kill anything at instant speed and even tack on some value. Sign me up! Bonus points to Blood Curdle in that it can be easily splashed. Scorching Dragonfire. 1 in a red, 3 damage to target creature. If it would die this turn, exile it. This is another solid removal pick. Damage-based removal isn't quite as good as effects that say destroy or exile, but this is a lot of damage for 2 mana. Instant speed also makes this a great way to outplay your opponents by scorching a creature when they try to enchant it or are depending on a creature to block. Bone Splinters. Black. Sacrifice a creature, destroy target creature. While this card is removal, it's not removal that you should be picking early. It doesn't cost much mana, but it will cost you a creature you have in play that could be attacking or blocking. Generally, you'd want to pick up a card like Bone Splinters late in the draft if you already have lots of disposable tokens in your deck. You can make it work in the late game by sacrificing a creature that's not able to attack or block, but this is not a card you should be prioritizing in most drafts. Lastly, let's look at Luminous Bonds for removal. 2 white for an aura. Enchanted creature can't attack or block. This isn't instant speed, and the creature could still use any activated or triggered abilities it has, but this is still high-quality removal. We'll talk more about how and when to use removal in the future, but for now, look for removal that can remove a creature that's attacking you or preventing you from attacking, and isn't asking you to jump through too many hoops to make it work. Additional value is our next target, and where the B.R.A.V.E. acronym really starts to fall apart. When I'd been drafting for a few years, a new set came out called Tempest. The set had 2 cards that we're going to quickly look at. One was Windrake, 2 in a blue for a 2/2 flyer. Another was Gravedigger, 3 in a black for a 2/2 that draws a creature card from your graveyard. If you're following the old B.R.A.V.E. acronym, you'd be picking the Windrake, but that's not the right call. We'll have a future episode that explains how decks with lots of flyers manage to function, but blindly picking flyers over solid value cards is going to lead to a deck that doesn't block well and is ineffectual at racing an opponent. Look for additional value like Gravedigger when a pack is missing bombs or removal. I've already mentioned that Sublime Epiphany falls into this camp. Actually, it's probably the king of this camp, but let's look at a few other cards to drive the point home. Llanowar Visionary, 2 in a green for a 2/2 that taps for green and draws a card. What's not to love? You get a decent body that can attack, protect, and tap for mana, as well as a new card. That's a lot of value. Manowar, 2 in a blue for a 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, return target creature to its owner's hand. Manowar is great for getting a pesky blocker out of the way for turn, knocking off auras on creatures, or just destroying tokens. Value cards aren't always creatures. For a last example, let's look at Wonder in Death. 2 in a black, return up to 2 target creatures from your graveyard to your hand, cycling for 2. Wonder in Death is wonderful value. Draw your 2 best dead creatures in the late game. Sounds great! The only thing to worry about with a card like this is what if you draw it early. Wonder in Death solves this by having cycling for 2 and letting you dig for creatures or lands. When you're looking for cards with additional value, look for cards that are flexible, as we discussed in the Mana Curve episode, or that draw you cards or that have an effect on the board state when you play them. And lastly, after you've picked your bombs, removal, and additional value, look for efficiency. While you're at it, keep this in mind for the whole draft. What we're looking for here is a creature that has a good set of power and toughness for its casting costs. Generally speaking, we're looking for at least a 2/2 for 2 mana, at least a 2/3 for 3 mana, and at least a 4/3 for 4 mana, and so on. Cards like Garruk's Harbinger, 1 green for a 4/3 with hexproof from black and card drawing text, isn't really a bomb, but it's so efficient that it can be terrifying to see on the other side of the table. It's not usually possible to have a 4/3 for only 3 mana. Cards like Library Larcenist are sorely lacking in stats, that is power and toughness. 2 in a blue for a 1/2, when it attacks, draw a card. This might look like a value card, but when we look at the stats we're getting for the mana, we can see that this card is quite bad on its own. You can combo it with other cards to build a value engine, but generally speaking, you shouldn't prioritize cards with low stat to mana ratios. If you're going to draft a bunch of Library Larcenists, you'd better have a good plan, because if you don't, you're going to get run over. What's better, cats or dogs? It's cats. Let me tell you why. Cats, that is, curve and tricks, are the last 2 things you need to pay attention to in your draft. Curve is important, as we've learned in the last episode. Combat tricks are in every set, and it's not bad to have 1 or 2 in your deck, but they're not something you need to prioritize. Just pick a few late in the packs if you want them. Thank you for watching this episode. Please like the video and tell a friend if you found it useful. If you'd like to ask any questions, like is this card a bomb, or is this card good removal, or you'd like to offer me a dump truck full of money and sponsor the series, please feel free to stop by my Twitch channel at www.twitch.tv/Semulin or respond in the comments. Stay cool, you brave cats and kittens.